So our next speaker is Mr. Brish Bhan Vaidya, Head of Asia Pacific Strategic Sourcing and Global Buying Center, Uber. Mr. Vaidya has 2 decades of experience in various global sourcing and procurement functions like strategic sourcing, procurement transformation, procurement operations, solution design, and consulting. And he has worked with global majors in their respective domains like Accenture, American Express, British Telecom, and Jetpact. In his current role with Uber, Mr. Vaidya is the Asia Pacific Head of Strategic Sourcing and he leads the Global Buying Center also. Today, Mr. Vaidya will talk about strategic supplier management. Over to you, Mr. Vaidya. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Pamela. I hope I am audible, right?
Yes,
All
yes, sir.
right.
You are.
Thank
You
you.
are.
I'm going to
Yeah.
share my screen. All right. Thanks everyone for joining and thanks for having me here. As Pamela just mentioned, so I'll be talking about the supplier relationship management. This is one topic which has been, picking a lot of pace in the last few years. It all started with a general discussion that, how are we managing our suppliers? But it was happening without tools and technologies. Today, if you look at the supplier relationship management tools are either coming as a standalone solution or they are part of, the sourcing tool offering that is happening, right? So that's how this particular topic is so important, irrespective of the type of industry, country, category. It's very, very important, right? That we should have the right set of supplier relationship management. So, my introduction has already been given, but just for reference again, have worked with some companies like American Express, Accenture, British Telecom, and now with Uber. So it's a variety of, industries that I have worked. So bringing, knowledge sometime from the banking to, the technology sector is helpful. And similarly, something from telecom, what has worked there well, and deploying that in the technology sector, that is something which I would say has been really, really helpful for me. The experience that I have mostly acquired is in the sourcing and procurement domain. I've done operations, I have done strategic sourcing, I have done solution design, technology deployment. So with the mix of all, I definitely would say that I've been lucky that I got, a chance to work across multiple domains, multiple companies, which I am deploying a lot in Uber. It's my 7th year in Uber now, and I've been leading the strategic sourcing function for Asia Pacific region, wherein we operate in around 12 to 13 countries in the region. Along with that, I lead the Global Buying Center, which is a setup that we did almost a year back, which manages a large volume of spend globally out of India. And then along with that, I am leading, the transformation from the sourcing side for Uber globally, wherein we are looking at what should be our future. So that's a brief about me. If I have to talk about the agenda about the supplier relationship management, broadly, I would be, giving you some insights on how the sourcing functions landscape is changing. Landscape here means what is it that our stakeholders or organizations or suppliers are asking us today. Then I'll be talking broadly about, how supplier relationship management has come up as a domain to look at. What is supplier relationship management, what are the benefits or why it is needed, why it has picked up so much speed now, what are the impacts of not having a supplier relationship management program in the organization, what is it that we need to do as a part of the overall SRM framework, and apart from that, what are the challenges that we generally observe. So uh, so setting up the context, slightly busy slide, but if you look at how expectations from sourcing and procurement has changed over the period of time. So the one which is on the left hand side is the traditional approach, which I would say is holding true for a lot of organizations, but for many organizations which are either at matured stage or are in best in class, expectations from the stakeholders are slightly different there. Because of that, they only picked up the maturity metrics, and they started working towards big time changes in the organization. If we go slightly, maybe a few years back, the expectation from sourcing slash procurement was we should get the right set of product, and right set of product or service here means the quality should be right, the price that we pay for that should be right, or sometime it was the best, are we paying the best price, and the overall cost of acquisition or running the operation should be best. So these were the expectation, and this is where the sourcing people were always working towards, wherein we had very clearly written rules and regulations around what is sourcing policy, what is procurement policy, how the system has to be done, when the sourcing has to be engaged. There were or there are still those rules that we need to have minimum 3 quotations. Cycle times generally are long when you actually go out and do tenders or RFPs, etc., to collect those 3 bids. You need to have a very very detailed scope of work. So these were some of the things that were happening in the past, and some clauses which were being negotiated in the contracts were like non-negotiable. Things definitely have changed from there. I won't say that they have changed for all the companies, all the categories, all the countries, but the trend definitely is changing. What stakeholders are today saying, guys, we are not concerned with your 30-40 pager policy. Just tell us what is right for the business. What is it that we as a stakeholder should know, so that we don't kind of do a non-compliant thing. Rest, you are the ones who are actually doing this. So you go and do the work for us, wherein keep the procedures simple in the overall process. That's where we have been using a lot of tools which are simple in nature, wherein users are also now matured. They know very well what is it that they need to focus. The expectation from stakeholder is again on the speed, right? The speed has to be right. We can't wait for 2 or 3 months for your cycle to get completed, right? So whenever you're working, make it fast for us. Yes, our expectation on cost remains the same. Our expectation on quality remains the same. And lastly, we don't want too much of hierarchy, right? We just need a single point of contact for us to work with and do this for us. So this is where the whole landscape of sourcing has been changing. So if everything is changing, supplier, who's a very very important part of this whole process, how do we kind of work with that supplier, how do we manage that supplier, also need to be changed, because you can't improve cost without having the supplier. You can't improve the speed of doing things if your supplier is not supporting. You can't actually have a error free operation if your supplier is not cooperating, right? So that's where the supplier piece is so important, and managing the supplier has become so important. So if we have to define what is supplier relationship management, when does it start? The answer is very simple. It starts the moment you as a sourcing person start identifying a vendor. For every vendor selection today or shortlisting today, there are some criteria which are either written or are in the mind of the buyer here. So the process starts there. Based on what you actually figure out from maybe Google or search engines, your questioning changes based on the inputs that you have received from these search engine, etc. So that is where what kind of relationship you need to start building with the supplier is very very important. Do you need to spend enough time initially in shortlisting the supplier, or is it like with a very basic understanding of their capabilities, either from the public domain or through a very simple meeting or one call, you can actually take a call. So the relationship journey starts from there. Once the supplier has been onboarded in your system, now the supplier is in your ecosystem, which means the supplier is now part of your family, right? You have to do business with them. So a lot of focus goes in that also. So that is also part of your relationship cycle, wherein for your day-to-day business, wherein you are issuing purchase order, taking services, making payments, etc., at every single point in time, you need to understand how good is your relationship going on with the supplier. Is it that you are facing too many challenges in solving each and everything apart from the procurement of services, or is it like going smooth? How understanding is your supplier, right? So that also need to be looked upon. Along with that come a proper framework to measure the performance, right? And performance is something which traditionally was not being evaluated much. A lot of it was perception based. For some supplier, it was being, measured. But today the scenario is slightly different for many organizations, wherein the supplier performance is actually tracked. And that is where, the tools and applications are actually helping. They actually track the overall journey of a supplier right from the time when you start searching for it until the time the supplier doesn't get, out of your system, which is like you stop working, make all the payments, and no more relationship with that supplier. So that whole journey which goes, every step has one or the other thing which is required to be done. Whether sourcing does it, procurement does it, finance, legal, tax, business, whoever does it, everyone has their part to play in that. That whole journey, how it is managed, is actually known as the supplier relationship management process. And this is quite analogous to the customer management, right? All of us are customers to either telecom companies, utility companies, banks, right? So we receive call from them, email from them, messages from them, either as a part of their service call or many times for billing, etc., right? And think that you are sometime, frustrated with the service of, the service provider. You end up, showing your anger there. Same thing can happen in the life of, the supplier also. It could be like supplier is slightly frustrated with the buying organization or the vice versa, right? So the customer cycle and supplier cycle generally are, the same, just that the customer relationship management has been happening for years, wherein the back offices have been created, and that is where things are now moving for supplier management also. Definitely technology has come. The number of suppliers are comparatively less as compared to the number of customers the company would have. So, it's slightly a lesser work, I would say, but the focus is still on the similar line. That's how, a lot of programs have been developed. So why is it needed, or what are the benefits of supplier relationship management? And these are not just generic things. These are the things which have come out after a lot of, researches, a lot of data analysis, interviewing a lot of people, that what is it that you get out of when you actually have a formal program of supplier relationship management. Broadly, if you look at these 5 6 benefits, they might be coming in your traditional approach also. But the moment you actually put a structure in place, you will see that whatever benefits you are getting, a lot of them are measurable and they are actually improving from time to time. And that is what creates a buyer's interest also. Oh, this program is really working. Let me actually invest slightly more into that. First and foremost, what is the biggest benefit? So your stakeholder is asking you to improve cost, improve efficiency, which means you want to do more with less, or you want to do things faster, right? That is efficiency. And definitely quality is their expectation. So when you have a supplier relationship management program in place, and I'll talk about what happens in that, you see every single key metric that you have is improving. So when that metric is improving, your stakeholder is happy, your CFO is happy, and a lot of other folks in the organization who are actually the service users are happy, and your customers are also happy because you as a organization are also delivering those services to some customers, right? So this is one of the tangible benefit which is quite evident from this particular process. Second is on the transparency and the visibility that you get into your business, supplier business, when you actually formalize this process of supplier relationship management. When we talk about transparency and visibility, we can actually get to know how is the supply chain of supplier working, right? Who are the suppliers for this supplier? Who are the other customers for this supplier, right? You actually get to see the visibility of how this might impact your organization's supply or supply chain also, right? When you start doing a formal evaluation of the supplier or start looking at their performance, right? Communication and collaboration is again a very, very important thing here. If you have uh, a particular mechanism through which you can actually provide feedback to the supplier or collect feedback for your organization from them, you're not just solving the problem with that supplier, maybe you are solving a bigger problem for your organization also, right? If one supplier comes and tell you that I always face a problem in getting payment through your organization, or maybe in the whole procure to pay cycle, I generally don't get to escalate. Now that's an input, which means somewhere in your organization your process is also not working. Maybe one supplier is telling you, others are not, but it might be impacting, right? In such cases, I'm sure all of you will agree, if a supplier sees a risk of maybe payment, sees a risk of supply with the buying organization, definitely in their mind they always would have, whenever I bid next or whenever I supply next to them, let me increase my price because I am seeing a issue in getting payment. So I have to build, my cost of operation and pass it on to the customer because this is how they have been doing. It's simply linked to a thing like when you pay in 30 days, your price is better compared to when you pay in 120 days, right? Your price will be slightly high because your cash flow gets impacted. That is there in the mind of the supplier also, right? How these things get sorted again through a very, very formal program. Innovation, right? If you don't talk to your supplier, how will you innovate? You can't simply innovate internally. If you are innovating internally, you are just impacting limited part of your organization and maybe your customer side of it. But how you will kind of innovate on the products that you are procuring or the services that you are procuring, again you need to collaborate with your supplier there. So that's very, very important, that innovation is something which has come up as a benefit out of this process. And definitely customer satisfaction, as I said earlier, if you're fixing your whole supply chain, your production or your service offering to your customer will also improve because of that, which means your end customer also would get satisfied, right? And last is risk management. So you can actually manage the risk again by having a proper communication and collaboration with the supplier. It could be a financial risk, legal risk, or any other kind of risk, right? So with a proper program, these are some of the benefits that any organization would get. Again, these are the things which have been confirmed by the sourcing and procurement professionals, that these are some of the benefits that we really, really see every time when we have an effective supplier relationship management program in place. So that's where it is so important. Next is what actually you lose if you don't have SRM, right? This is just opposite to the benefits, right? You will see a performance dip, or you will only come to know it when the problem has happened, right? If you don't have an effective relationship. But yes, if you have an effective relationship, you will come to know in advance through a measurement, oh, things can go wrong at that point in time, and that's where you started talking to the supplier. And when escalation comes or when things go wrong, you're only spending time to solve that, right? Which means your workload will increase. You have to invest a lot of resources from your side. It could be money, it could be people, it could be the time. So that is what actually would actually increase the procurement cost for the organization also. If your cost is going up, definitely it will have the impact on your further supply chain also, wherein you will take time to go to market or maybe providing services to your customers also. And with that, transparency and visibility always will be missing. So as I said, these are just opposite to what are the benefits, so easy to understand. But yes, these are the things which have been happening where effective supplier relationship management is not in place, right? So overall it does impact the business if your supply chain is broken. I'm sure a lot of you would agree, the experience that everyone had in last 2 to 3 years post, the pandemic. Things were pretty clear, right? It was sometimes tough to figure out, okay, if this supplier is not supplying to me, who's the other supplier? Oh, how do I tell this supplier that can we increase, the payment terms, etc.? Why those challenges were coming? Because the relationship was missing. It was an occasional discussion with the supplier at the time of maybe the RFP or selection or contracting. After that, it was left to the business to manage. But when business started facing the problem, they came to sourcing saying, can you help me? You were like, okay, let me first figure out who's the point of contact at supplier. Maybe they might have changed by now. These are very small things sometimes to look at, but they do have a larger impact on the overall service quality here, right? Again, that's where supplier relationship management program is so important. So when we kind of define the supplier relationship management process, there are some basics which need to be understood. When it's basics, we are talking about what should be the foundation of the program, right? Just like we all are employees, right? I'm sure you will relate it to the performance management cycle that all of us go through. Either we are doing the evaluation of our team members, or we ourselves are getting evaluated by our managers or management, right? So there is a foundation which is always laid down for employee performance management. The same level of foundation management has to be kept for the suppliers also. So if you look at these six elements here, you can actually relate it to, are you seeing that in your organization for your own evaluation also? You'll figure out that these topics do get discussed, right? So when we talk about open communication, what we say that there has to be a transparency when we are actually doing an evaluation of a supplier or managing a relationship with a supplier or doing a performance evaluation of a supplier, right? And the communication has to be both side, right? That's where the mutual respect come. It cannot be a one way or one sided mechanism wherein you are just giving feedback to the supplier. Okay, this is something that you did good, this did not work well, right? So it cannot be one directional, it has to be bi-directional, it has to be coming from the supplier also. Again, as I said earlier, many a times when you collect feedback from supplier, it can actually impact your internal processes, internal delivery, and your customer satisfaction also. So along with communication, a mutual respect has to be given. The discussion has to be factual, discussion has to be healthy. It cannot be wherein the ego comes into play and you are actually demeaning the supplier, right? So things would not work after that. So the respect is very, very important. And when you are actually doing a supplier relationship management meetings or program, ideation should be one of the key element which should be kept there, right? When you are discussing with the supplier, talk about the ideas. Before idea, talk about the problems. Okay, I'm not facing any problem with you, what you are supplying or providing to us, but tell me what additional I can do wherein my customer also get satisfied, my internal metrics become better, my business grows. Now those are the things that need to be discussed with the vendor. It should not be a cost only discussion every time. What is it that you can do to reduce the cost? I'm not saying that cost should not be discussed, but cost should not be the only element, right? If you're discussing only cost, sometime a simple question like, can you tell me within the existing relationship, existing process that we have, what is it that need to be done to reduce the cost, rather than always asking, can you reduce it by 5%, 10%? Ask for those ideas. What is it that could be done? And you will see, okay, there are things coming from the supplier, right? So the fairness also has to be there. When we talk about fairness, it's like when you are evaluating the suppliers, or if you are judging the suppliers, or if you are kind of having discussion with the supplier, keep the program same for all the suppliers for a particular category, commodity, country, etc. It should not be that whoever is your favorite supplier, you are actually doing more open and fair discussion with them, and the one who's a smaller supplier occasionally supplies, you don't even evaluate them or don't even kind of understand their capability. So it has to be fair with everyone that you're doing. That's how you can actually be ethical, you will be transparent, you will get more ideas how you can actually improve your overall health of the organization. Trust has to be there, right? When supplier is telling you something, make sure that you actually accept if it is coming with the fact. Don't kind of think that no, you can't tell me that my organization is not doing right. Ask for those facts and trust that maybe there is some experience the supplier would have. So that is very, very important. And last is the flexibility, right? How flexible both parties are in making things work. It should not be always rigid, right? Okay, this is what is written on the paper, this is what I expected you to do, and I don't want to listen, right? Many times you have to be flexible. Okay, what are the factors, what might have impacted suppliers performance, or what is it that might have impacted your internal organization's metric also, which might have created some issues, right? Or what actually made things better. So be flexible in your approach. So these are very, very important elements when you are laying down the foundation of a very healthy supplier relationship management program. If we talk about the process, it's a pretty simple 5-step process as such, which actually starts with the supplier segmentation. We will talk about what is supplier segmentation. So it's basically dividing suppliers based on certain criteria, that who's a strategic supplier, who's a leverage supplier, who's a bottleneck, etc., or who's a routine supplier, right? So it starts with that. So you have to look at the complete supply base and start doing the segmentation. Many companies actually have automation done here, wherein the supplier segmentation start at the time of onboarding itself. It could be based on the value which you will be procuring, or the category, or the business for which the supplier would be kind of providing service. But it can be done post facto also, when you have a history with the supplier. So once you have done the segmentation, the second step is setting up the objective. What is it that you want to get out of a particular supplier or from the particular program, right? So that has to be very, very clear. Third, you have to put, the performance management in place. It cannot be just relationship wherein you just do a formal meeting with the supplier, but it is not backed by any data, right? So the performance measurement is very, very important. That is where, things become pretty clear and better. Fourth is, after you have done, the performance management, you have to build the strategy around how do I now manage a particular supplier. Now when I know how they are performing, what is it that I need to do? And last is, how do we jointly work towards, the continuous improvement of, the services. So this is a 5-step process which generally happens in the SRM as such. Going slightly detailed into this, first, as I said, is the categorization of the supplier. Broadly, it is done based on 4-box approach here, which is pretty standard, and most of the companies work in this manner only. The two axes on which the measurement is generally done: what is the supply risk with the supplier? When we talk about supply risk, we look at what are the production services they are offering, how good is the quality, are the specifications matching with what we are saying, do they have enough capacity. You do the financial stability or financial due diligence of the supplier, right? So this is on one side. And the other side of, or the other metric that you basically look at is what is the potential to add value from the supplier side, how the supplier can help you as an organization in ensuring that your supply chain doesn't get disturbed, right? Are they innovative, right? Are they using technology? How strong they are in their supply chain, or how strong is their supply chain with us, right? These are some of the factors based on which you actually do the segmentation of the supplier. There are different questions which are generally asked from the supplier so that you can figure out where does the supplier fit in. For example, if there is a supplier who is actually adding a very, very high value to your organization, wherein they do a lot of innovation, also they always come with ideas, and the supply risk with that supplier is also high. Supply risk high means, what if the supplier stops supplying to you? They are very innovative, everything is sorted at their end, but because of something or some reason they stop supplying to you. Now that is a very, very risky subject for the organization, which means if that is happening, that supplier is a strategic supplier for you. And if you look at, strategic suppliers will be limited in nature. It's not very easy to replace a strategic supplier, or it's not easy to figure out who should be replacing this supplier that easily. So your focus should be very, very high on the strategic supplier here. If I talk about the routine supplier, and I'll not cover all because this is slightly easy to understand and you can read. A routine supplier, they're generally suppliers which are many in your database. Even if you don't have many in your database, easy to figure them out, right? Generally they are suppliers maybe in stationery, maybe sometime in the facility space, right? Because there are enough of them. If one supplier doesn't supply, you have another one. If there is no other one, you can easily find the other one. So the value that they add is pretty limited, right? So these are your routine suppliers, so you have to build a strategy around them also. Do we really need to meet them often, or is it like we can simply do their evaluation based on the core metrics which are coming from the tools and the applications? On the other hand, strategic, as I said, they have to be managed slightly different. We'll slightly talk about that in the later slides. So these are some of the questions, again, the type of question that you have to ask yourself or ask the supplier also sometime. What is the strategic importance of that supplier, right? Is it a custom product or is it a standard product? Are they really flexible? If I ask them to do something at some point in time, how they are behaving, right? And on the right hand side, you have to kind of do the scoring. Whenever I ask for a flexibility, oh, they accept it easily, right? Which means they're really good, right, on that parameter. So I should score them high. You may have a supplier, whenever I ask them to do something different, they have such a diplomacy in their, or bureaucracy in their organization, that things don't move, right? Is that the right set of supplier for me, right? The answer is no. Definitely their score would be low. So these are some of the questions, and again, it can vary from organization to organization, sometimes buyer to buyer. What question do you ask to do the categorization of the suppliers, right? So once you have done the categorization of the suppliers, second is to set objectives, and the objectives have to be smart. I'm sure as employees, we talk a lot about smart goals or smart objectives in our organization. Same thing need to be done with the supplier when you are actually running the supplier relationship management program with them or performance management program with them, you should have specific goals or objectives written. What is it that you want to get out of it, right? Second, measurable. Whatever you want to get out of a goal. For example, you want to drive, cost. You should be very, very clear. Oh, I want to drive cost rather than being an open-ended. I want things to improve. Now that is a very, very broad statement. What things are you talking about, right? So the day you define, I want the cost to be improved, what cost you want to improve, right? So that is something measurable. Is it 2%, 5%? You should be very, very clear what is it that you're actually asking for. Third, is it achievable, right? It should not be that you're actually working in a domain wherein supplier has a fixed cost of maybe 85, 89, on say 90 out of the overall cost, and 10% is their margin. Now you cannot expect 12 to 14% of cost improvement. Simple example could be, if you are working in the labor market, you know very well that there is a fixed cost of the salary which will go to the labor, and there is a margin, right? You can't think about the overall costing. I want 50% cut. How can you get 50%? Because 90% is anywhere regulated cost. You can't do that, right? So it has to be achievable. It has to be realistic. Realistic here means that, can this happen or not, right? In all the conditions, will this get delivered or not? Last is timely. You need to define the time by when you want to get it, right? So this is again similar to the objectives that we all as employees or employers, actually have in our organization. The same methodology has to be applied in our supplier relationship management program also, or supplier performance management program also. So once we have done the categorization and put in the goals in place or objectives in the place, then we have to move towards the performance management here. And performance management based on the smart goals will always be based on some numbers, facts, and will always be quantitative. This cannot be perception based, right? So you have to very, very clearly define what are the key performance indicators, what are the service level agreements that you need to kind of have in place, based on which you will do the performance management of the supplier. So this is what the process is for supplier performance management, wherein you actually look at the data, you analyze it, and you then figure out how good the supplier is and what are the risks associated with the particular supplier, and what is it that you need to do now to kind of work towards the continuous improvement. If I talk about the supplier management performance management process, again, this is a representation how you actually look at it. So there are two stages here. One is what you do prior to engaging a supplier for a particular supply, and second is post of that, right? So think of a scenario wherein you are floating a tender out today. You actually define the supplier selection criteria, and then in your statement of work or scope of work, you actually define what are the expectations that you have from the supplier. So setting those performance targets prior to engaging a supplier in your tender document or later in your contract is very, very important, and that is what ideally should get further translated into your performance management cycle also. If you have defined KPIs like maybe 99% on time delivery, invoicing on time, zero escalation, now they should be the one which should appear in our performance management also. Now, who are the people who you need to go to collect this data? Definitely sitting in your office without consulting anyone, you should not be doing the performance management of the supplier. You should create a questionnaire, you should create a survey which should go out to the people who are involved in the overall process. They all should do the rating, ranking, scoring of the supplier, based on which then you should kind of look at how good the performance of the supplier would be. So be it the stakeholder, sometimes could be finance, could be legal also, sometime where you can ask them, do you think there are any risks or contractual breaches that are coming? Legal is the best team to advise on that, how they have kind of seen the legal risk with the supplier, how easy was it to negotiate with them on the conditions which have been put in the contract. Similarly, taxation, is everything going fine on the taxation front? I mean, if I take an example, say for India, one of the issue that tax generally tells that your vendor is actually not filing GST returns on time, which impacts our accounting also, or taxation also, right? So taxation in those cases would say this is a problematic supplier because they are not following the compliance requirements on time, right, which impacts us also. So that's where you have to define who are the people or who are the departments in your organization to whom you need to go every time for scoring. And this is just a sample of the scorecard, how you can measure various suppliers, and this is based on some surveys. You can actually do the weightage of the broad parameters, float a survey, and then do the allocation of the scores there, and a dashboard can tell you like who's a green supplier here and who's red, right? Who's not performing, who's performing, where is it that you need to put attention. This is just a representation. You can have your own representation also, and today we have tools in place which actually does the supplier performance management evaluation also. So once the performance measurement has been done, then you define what is it that you need to get out of that. I mean, one of the example I've taken here is risk management framework, right? So are there any risk associated with the supplier? It could be legal risk, or again, financial risk, environmental risk. We did hear about sustainability in the previous session. So define all those things. So what you need to do in this framework, once you have done the supplier evaluation, you get to know where are the pain points or which are the areas which need to improve, right? So that is where you will have the identify phase and the measure phase already done. Now how do you want to manage it is again something based on the discussion that you need to do with the supplier. Again, sitting alone and forcing something on supplier may or may not work, right? That's where this word relationship is coming again and again. You have to do collaboration, you have to communicate and define strategies how you will be kind of solving for the problems that have come. And whatever problems have been there, right, it could be supply issue, it could be like supplier is not even updated on what's happening in market, they rarely innovate, they kind of don't bill us on time. So all those things need to be kind of discussed with the supplier, and you have to look at how things are improving time from time to time, right, and keep a check on that. So monitor their performance improvement, and lastly again report that and use that report when you are meeting the supplier again. And just to give you an idea, when we talk generally about the strategic suppliers, it could be a monthly review, it could be a quarterly review, or it could be a 6 monthly review. On the other hand, if we talk about routine suppliers, actually no one can spend time on those 2-3 thousand suppliers and keep meeting them, right? Can this be done through a simple survey where you use the same framework again to define what you need to do? So depending upon the categorization of the supplier, you have to define your meeting frequency and evaluation frequency with them, and start measuring how things are improving with them. And there are various ways to managing risk as such what you have identified. This is just an example. If you figure out that there are some risks which are coming out with a supplier and you cannot do much around that, better to kind of work with another supplier. On the other hand, if there are risks which can be covered easily through the contractual changes or putting additional SLAs, KPIs, penalties, etc., that is what you could can do, right? So there are various ways of managing risk. This is just an example, so I'll not spend much time on this because we have limited time here. And lastly, when you have done the performance management and you have built the strategies around how you will be managing the supplier, last is to look at how you work towards improving or the continuous improvement with a particular supplier. And these are again similar to the benefits slide which I mentioned or shared earlier, right? So once you see that these things are happening, these are some of the benefits again you will start seeing as the outcome here, wherein you won't have any issues with the business continuity, right? Or your discussion will be around how do we ensure that we don't face any issues or challenges, our risks are reduced, we get higher quality, we innovate jointly, right? We kind of have a better customer satisfaction. These are some of the things that are the last point in the process of supplier relationship management. Lastly, after the process has been done, I just wanted to talk about some of the common observations which have been found, that what are the challenges that appear in the supplier relationship management program. First, I mean, this is not something that you can do as an ad hoc activity, because this is how it has been happening over the years, and that's where with limited focus things did not change. So supplier relationship management program does need time. Today organizations have defined roles and teams who are actually just doing the supplier relationship management, wherein They do the categorization, they collect surveys, they arrange meetings, they meet supplier, they bring everyone in the meeting, they track meeting minutes. After that, they put actions in place, they do the allocation of the responsibility, and keep running that cycle. So it is very important that time has to be given. If you don't have a team, if you don't have people, then surely this would not work, right? It's- Second challenge, the focus generally has been found on cost. A lot of people do supplier relationship management program only to reduce cost, right, or only to improve cost, right? No, that should not be the focus. So when you are defining objectives, make sure that you cover them in your program management also, and for that definitely you need to have a team, right? So without team you can't work. And last is lack of collaboration. Again, you can't just sit at your desk and define certain things thinking, oh, it takes a lot of time. Why should I go to the people who actually work with the supplier? Why should I talk to the stakeholders? Why should I talk to the supplier? Let me define how good or bad this supplier is. If that is the case, then definitely the program would fail. So this is again one of the challenge that organizations have been reporting, that I don't have a team, I don't have people, this needs investment, so I can't do it. But on the other hand, those who have done, definitely all those people do talk about this is something very important. Honestly, I haven't heard or seen wherein organizations have been removing people who have been put on the supplier relationship management program because they see the value out of it. So probably this is what I wanted to cover. Just last statement again. Very very simple but important thing. Everyone is a customer for someone, right? So we are customer for our supplier or a supplier to somebody, right? But we are the suppliers of service to our customers also. So that is the power of this program. Again, last thing, think like you are a customer. What do you expect from your service provider? Try to deploy those things in your supplier relationship management program. You will see you would have a happy customer, happy supplier, happy stakeholder there. So with that, I end my presentation and open to any questions. Yeah, you're on mute, Pamela, in case you're speaking.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Vaidya. There are questions in the chat box, so I'll try to take it one by one. So the first question is, when we talk about e-procurement software, is there anything available off the shelf, or does it have to be developed and deployed?
Great question. So as I said, there are off-the-shelf solutions also, but if you look at the new set of tools or even the existing technologies, most of them are now coming with the offering as a part of that broad solution only. I will not name a particular one because that will not be justice, but whatever you are using today, most of these tools today have a supplier relationship management program. And the reason why they're offering, because they actually have your procurement data, invoicing data, supplier data already available. They have built in an additional module there wherein they are saying you don't have to spend too much time collecting data based on what you are transacting with a supplier. I can actually generate some data or metric around that, and I'll create that for you. Similarly, some companies who actually had been doing spend analysis applications or tools, they have also come with offerings today. In fact, in last few months I have seen so many global solutions wherein the traditional spend management companies are now coming saying forget about spend management, I will connect with your ERP, I will pull your procurement data, and then I will give you a ready reckoner or ready report so that you can actually go to your supplier and start talking about performance. So things definitely have changed. Simple answer again is existing tools have been kind of enhanced. Now it's all about buying that module now from the provider here. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Vaidya. So we don't have any more questions. So thank you for that. Now we'll move on to the coffee and networking break. Do check out our virtual event platform, and after the networking break, we will join at 5 o'clock. Thank you.